Hello and welcome to Meldon Law and Friends, a weekly podcast brought to you by Meldon Law, a statewide law firm with its primary office in Gainesville and also with offices in South Florida covering the entire Tri-County South Florida area, from Miami-Dade through Broward through Palm Beach County, and also in Marion County, where we just opened up a brand new office. You've been hearing us talk about it. Jeffrey, exciting times. This is our 22nd episode. Never thought we'd go this far, but we've done it.
Yes, and I want to thank you for all your hard work in preparing for all of these episodes, and it's really exciting that our podcast is getting so much traction.
It really has, and it's growing. And for those who aren't aware, we are on many audio platforms as well. We are on Facebook Live, of course, streaming live every Friday, and starting in less than 2 weeks, on Tuesday, April 6th, we will be going to a new time. I believe it's 1 p.m. or 12:30 p.m. My producer will probably give me a nudge. Whatever the case may be, it'll be on Tuesday, April 6th. We will be going live with Facebook Live questions. We'll be taking questions. You just simply follow us on Facebook, text in a question, and we'll answer it for you. A couple of things to get out of the way before we get to a great show today. It's something I've been looking forward to a long time, talking about music history in Gainesville, in particular the Great Southern Music Hall, an iconic music venue. But let's cover a couple of things quickly. We've still got some tickets, Jeffrey, for softball games this weekend. We have some winners for tonight. Tonight's game at 6 p.m. I want to congratulate the winners of the 6 tickets for tonight, but we still have 6 tickets for tomorrow's game, which I believe is a 5 p.m. game for the women's softball team, and then Sunday at 11 a.m., and there are 6 tickets both days, right?
Correct. Have you gone to any of the softball games yet?
I have not, and I will, I promise. I have been to the baseball games, and I love them, and I know the product is outstanding with softball as well, so I will be, and I'm excited about it.
Well, I've gone to some of the games, and the Gator softball team rocks. I mean, they are so much fun. So any of our viewers or listeners out there, check out Gator softball. It is incredible. The Lady Gators are always in the top 2 or 3 or 4 in the country. The facility there is amazing, and they're always improving it. So get behind the Florida Gators softball team. We're winners, and we should support them.
It's amazing how well they literally do in everything. I mean, we've had, of course, the volleyball coach. We've had the legendary soccer coach, Becky Burley. All the women's teams are just doing so incredibly well. So I agree with you. I'll be checking out softball. But the easy way to apply for these tickets could not be easier. You just go to the Meldon Law Meldon Law internet page, our web page, the home page, right at the very top. You click the link for volleyball, for softball, for baseball, whatever it may be. Just click the link and you'll be eligible to apply for the tickets. Like we said, 6 tickets for tomorrow's game, 6 tickets for Sunday's game, plus gift certificates. It's quite a deal.
Yeah. So for our listeners and viewers, again, you go to meldonlaw.com, the home page for our website. And on that home page, right at the top, there'll be a bar that says enter the contest. It's that simple. Go to meldonlaw.com, homepage. At the top, you'll see the red bar that says enter the contest, and you're in. And a lot of our local folks are so thrilled to go to the game. But I think it's time to start the show, Chris.
Yes. I've been looking forward to this a long time. I'm just going to make the introductions, then turn it over to you 3 guys. 3 legendary figures when it comes to the development of music in Gainesville, Florida. To my farthest left, Jim Forsman, who was one of Jeffrey's original partners in the Great Southern Music Hall back in the early 70s, along with Peter Laird, a well-known entertainment attorney. My very good friend, Albert Teebagy, who I've known for over 40 years. Albert was the original talent buyer and concert promoter for the Great Southern Music Hall with Albert Promotions. So I'm honored to be with all you guys.
Well, it's great. And Albert, thank you for joining us. Jim, so I wanted to kind of get things rolling here. Jim and I were the original founders of the Great Southern Music Hall in 1974. Our first show was April 26, 1974, with the Earl Scruggs Review. I think Lester Flatt may have shown up for that show too, because Scruggs and Flatt were partners for a long time. But Jim, why don't you start with your involvement in downtown Gainesville, the store you had, and how you came to let me know that there was an opportunity to start a performing arts theater.
Well, it began with Joe Silverman introducing me to the ABC Theater next door to his clothing store. And quite frankly, it had been run down. The theater was run down, and the people coming there were having fights, and it was right next to a fine men's shop. So he was concerned, and he came over and talked to me and asked me what I thought could be done with the property. And so he and I got together and talked the manager into letting us inside to go look at it. And Joe told me there was a stage there, and in the old days, they had the Chautauqua circuit would come through and do stage plays. So sure enough, there was a fixed movie screen, and behind that was this huge speaker, but there was a stage with dressing rooms, and there's even curtains there. And so it intrigued me, and so I began thinking about it, not exactly sure what to do with it, but I thought this is really, really something that could be done. And one night I was talking to Larry Turner about it, and he said, well, you know, Jeff Meldon is trying to do something with a concert venue here in Gainesville at another location, I think at the time. And so he introduced us, and I told you what we had there and what could be done. And then it went from there as far as coming up with an organic growth of a music hall, because it wasn't, we didn't sit down and do a drawing and say, this is what we're going to do.
We saw a stage, and we said, hey, we can make, and there were seats. There were 800 seats in the theater.
Yeah.
And
we had a janitor there who was great. He kept that place up. He was about 90 years old, I think.
You know what?
Dave.
I actually have a picture here of the janitor right here, okay?
And so one day, we went to
Dave Roberts. His name.
Dave Roberts. Right. And I said, Dave, we want to give you a raise. He said, will you have to take any more taxes? I said, yes. He said, well, then I don't want a raise. He was an interesting character from the old school and had a lot of respect for him, and he did a great job.
And he helped you. He helped you a lot. I know. There were. Here's a picture of myself, Peter Laird, and Jim Forsman here. The Gainesville Sun did a big promo piece on this the month before we opened. This says March of 1974. April 26, 1974 was the opening show. And there's actually a picture of the stage. I don't know if you can see that, Jim, but it shows that there was a stage there, but it needed a lot of work. Can you, let's talk about, what happened. Well, you had mentioned that I had been looking for something in the Performing Arts Theater. My recollection of the story is
you wanted to put on some concerts, I believe.
Well, I was good friends with Minnie Ripperton and Dick Rudolph, her husband. And I knew Dick from, he lived next door to my Aunt Pearl in Pittsburgh. So I knew him growing up, and they moved into town. And I knew Minnie Ripperton was a big star with the Rotary Connection. I had been listening to her music for years. And the three of us started looking for a music venue. And we saw some places. The Cotton Club was in the east side of town, but it was dilapidated, and we didn't have the bankroll to renovate that. Okay, and so I kind of put that on hold. But Larry Turner and I were best friends, and we were traveling together and doing all kind of stuff together. And I told him about it, and so that's how he knew to tell you that I had been looking for something to do in the musical arts.
I don't know if you remember, but when I went in there to buy the theater, we paid $5,000 for the entire giddy up, everything. And then the rent was $1,250 a month.
I thought it was $1,500 a month.
Something like that, $1,250. It was so it's like, we could use it for a storage warehouse or something.
It must have been 25 or 30,000 square feet.
It's huge, it's huge.
And it had all the seats in. So anyhow, you and I get together and we go, what the hell? Let's try to do it. Peter, I could tell it was going to be a big distraction from my law practice, and I was a 60% owner of the law firm, and Peter Laird owned 40%. So I said to Peter, I said, look, I'll take my 50% and give you, a proportionate share. So that's how Peter Laird got in, because I didn't want him bitching about me not working in the law practice. So,
well, basically, your focus of energy was on promoting, getting concerts and getting movies and doing those, you and Peter, and I was down trying to figure out how to make this operation function when people show up.
And lucky for us, you had a very successful men's store, the Young American shop, right?
Right, yeah.
And you were right across the street, so you could be running back and forth.
And I did that a lot. I think there's a picture in the newspaper of me in the middle of the street.
Well, how did you guys sell liquor? Was there any story behind that?
Well,
Jim, you can tell the story.
We thought, we said, if we sold beer and wine and so on in a movie theater, that would be kind of unique. And I think there was another place that may have had something like that we'd heard about. So we applied for a beverage license, and there was a quota license still out there. But of course, there's a lot of people trying to get their hands on a quota license.
Now, quota license, for those of you that don't know, back then, for every 2,500 people in a county, they would issue one 4COP license, which would allow you to sell anything, no matter how much capacity you have, everything.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
So,
That's the way to go.
One day I called Arnold Sorrell with the Jim Walter Corporation. They had just given me a recognition down there. I got to know
tell them
them
about the recognition, because you were 24 years old at the time, right?
Yeah, they gave me an award. I was one of the 25 outstanding businessmen in the United States, according to Jim Walter. It's the only thing I've ever won in my life. So he gave us some money and introduced us to all the big banks, and it was a very interesting time. But Arnold Sorrell, I guess somehow somebody knew somebody, and I think you said there may have been somebody else.
Jack McGriff. We made a visit over there as well, and Jack was the most prominent Democratic influencer at the time.
So I can tell you, I was sitting at my desk one day, and I saw this envelope, and I opened it up, and it said 4COP. It said, I'd never even seen a beverage license, much knew what it was, but I said, I think it's a beverage license, and sure enough, it was, and that day we called the carpenters in to build those little bars that were down there, and we went and got some ice and some tubs and went to ABC and bought some booze to sell, because we didn't know you had to go to a distributor.
I can just see you guys doing that. Why does that not surprise me?
We were ready.
We were ready to go. Well, we started out, I think we may have started with the beer and wine, and then a little
We did it all at the same time.
Oh, it all came in at the same time.
Yeah, once we got that license, and then we opened the wine cellar, and we built the backstage bar. We actually became official, and we bought from the distributors.
and I'll tell you what was really amazing. I have Marty Gerard's book, the book about the history of the music scene in Gainesville, Music Everywhere. But when we started the Great Southern Music Hall, before Albert came in, we had the Earl Scruggs Review first, the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, Ray Charles, Dave Brubeck, Bo Diddley, Jerry Lee Lewis. Do you remember the Jerry Lee Lewis story?
Oh, I remember Jerry Lee Lewis. We had to buy that Steinway piano. Big, beautiful Steinway piano, about 10 or 12 grand. We financed it for $100 a month for life. And he got up on top of that thing and started dancing on it.
All right. We're going to hear more about that story in just a minute. We've got to cut to a break. We could probably go all day on this, and we probably will. Again, this is Meldon Law and Friends. This is our 22nd episode of our podcast. Today is Friday, March 26th, with our good friends Jim Forsman, Albert Teebagy, who we'll be talking to next segment. Thanks for joining us. We'll be right back.
The Gator Nation will be the first to tell you that in all kinds of weather, we all stick together, which is why Meldon Law is honored to be the only official law firm partner of the Florida Gators. We hope you never find yourself the victim of a serious accident, but if you do, our team is here for you. Gators won't back down from a fight, and neither do we.
Welcome back to Meldon Law Friends, 22nd episode on Friday, March 26, 2021. Today is a special episode honoring some icons from Gainesville music history. Jim Forsman to the left, Albert Teebagy directly to my left, and Jeffrey Meldon. The three of them were driving forces behind the legendary Great Southern Music Hall that I remember well because I was a freshman in 1975, and I remember those shows, Cheech and Chong, Steve Martin, so many things. And other than concerts at UF, that was the place to go, the Great Southern Music Hall.
Yeah, so here's a picture of the Great Southern
I'm going
Music
to come around
Hall,
and look at it.
and everybody can see what it looked like. Enter the Dragon, we played that movie. Bruce Lee was in that. But we had movies, we had theater, we had all kinds of stuff. But the list of artists goes on, and we're going to feature that on this. But I was finishing telling the story of some of the acts we had before Albert came in. Muddy Waters, Minnie Riperton. Now, Jimmy Buffett came in November 14th, 1974.
Do you remember he had just come out in Playboy, I believe right along that time, and he was just starting, and we lost money on the show.
He didn't do well.
Well, actually,
He was just, something happened there, I
one
remember that.
of the pot dealers that I represented, named Kelly Ogden, was
Yeah.
friends with Jimmy Buffett.
Oh, okay.
And they, I think they did a bare bones charter of the theater for
They
that show
did.
because they financed
They
it. And
did.
Albert, you
Yeah.
would have been there.
Yeah.
So anyhow,
I've been there.
there's some other. I mean, I don't know if you remember, but Jerry Lee Lewis got so drunk, that we had to pry him out of the mobile home that was behind the theater. We didn't have a dressing room, a real dressing room. It
dressing
didn't
room.
have a toilet or anything.
Yeah.
Do you remember Farron Young?
Yes.
Did you, then we had to get him a fifth of Seagram 7, and I was standing there, and he took that bottle and drank the whole thing and went out there and did his performance.
Amazing.
It just, I mean, I was sitting there, how could anybody drink a whole fifth of Seagram 7 and go out there and do their stage
Are you sure it
performance?
wasn't a pint?
No, it was a fifth. I mean, it's like emblazoned in my mind. I'll never forget watching him do it.
So anyhow, part of the story goes on. So Jim and I are trying to figure out how we put this thing together. There was a place called University City Bank, and we knew the president of the bank, Bob Coons, right? And Jim and I go down there and we say, well, look, we were in our 20s at the time, and we said, we want a $50,000 loan, which at that time was equivalent to about $200,000. And, he said, well, what are you going to do with it? And we told him the idea about this music hall. He said, no problem, and wrote us a check for $50,000. And we started, which, we didn't realize how much it was going to be. And I don't know, did you replace the seats, all 800 seats at that time?
No. Dave repaired them. The seats were fine. The cost in building the bars and sound equipment. Remember, we bought sound equipment, and it was very expensive.
Where did we get it from? Lipham's?
No, the sound fellas ordered this $20,000, $15,000 soundboard, and
Probably Mark Pinsky.
And we had great
Yeah.
sound.
Yeah, Mark Pinsky probably.
Pinsky.
Yeah.
And we had great sound in the theater
Yeah.
because there were
The acoustics.
baffles on the side, and it was 800 seat theater, and it was raked, which meant it sloped
Yeah.
upwards, and
It was
it
cool.
had one of the best acoustic sounds of any theater
really did.
I've ever
Yeah.
been in.
Yeah.
So
Because of that.
So anyhow,
It's
Jim
like a horn.
and I, we figured we got the money, we got the liquor license, we got the lease for 15 years or something on the building.
Yeah.
I think we had 5 years plus 2 options for 5 more, and we wind up opening the place, and people were coming. We were amazed.
Well, that first show with Earl Scruggs actually was supposed to be at the Hilton, and they got scared because too many people wanted to come, and Albert I guess they called Albert, and then he called and said, "Is the theater ready?" And I said, "We're still putting down carpet." And actually, when people were coming in the front door, we were still putting carpet going down the aisles, going out the back door.
Well, that's what you call last minute reparation. So I'm going to introduce our next guest, Albert Teebagy. And Albert is from Daytona Beach, and my wife, Toby, was from Daytona Beach as well. And that's how we got to meet in 1972. Albert was down in South Florida working with the biggest promoter in Miami, a guy named Lise Campbell, and he had graduated from FAU and was learning the music business. So, and I knew Albert through our friendship and family friendship because he was very, very close with my wife's family at the time. So I was also representing Tom Petty, and the group was Mudcrutch, and I took a tape of Mudcrutch down to see Albert. This is probably 1972,
Right.
And I said, Albert, this is an up and coming group. I think Tom Petty and Mudcrutch are going to go somewhere. And Albert presented it to Lise Campbell, and they listened to it, and then they made a few calls, and basically, I think the headliner for the shows, whoever their booking agents were, they were trying to promote their up and coming acts, and they didn't want some unknown act, leading the bill. So Albert turned down Tom Petty, and that was our first professional relationship.
Yeah, I didn't even think about it that way, but I guess that's probably true. I was just really learning to book bands then, honestly, out of that office. And I started selling bands to colleges and learning how to go to the engagements and babysit the bands, make sure that the school had their checks ready and that the bands got paid. The stuff that you had to do then. And I was really a ticket guy in that office. I distributed tickets because they didn't have computerized ticketing back then. But we were doing all the big name shows that came into South Florida and getting, had the venues tied up.
Pirates World.
Yeah, Pirates World and the Miami High Life for on time.
Yeah,
which was
those were
that
big
was
venues.
a fabulous venue. We did some great stuff there, R&B and rock, and did some great stuff there. And I loved living in Miami for the experience of being in a big city.
And learning.
And learning. But, then the opportunity, the timing was good. And then, I came to be a big fish in a little pond.
So I call Albert after doing the booking for about 5 or 6 months and trying to book in live acts, movies, trying to figure out what to do as far as, everything else regarding the Great Southern Music Hall. I call Albert. I said, Albert, I'm a lawyer. I need some help here. I got to run a practice here. And
because what he does, it consumes, and you got to eat, live, and sleep, and live it. I mean, it's got to be in your DNA. And that's the same thing with show business. When you start getting into being in the music business, especially at that time, you have to give it your all the time. And you got to be thinking about it constantly, and if you want to really get good in it. And get the gold and platinums on your wall, okay?
Do you have any gold and platinums on your wall?
Yes, thankfully, I was awarded a bunch of them over the years, and they're given to you by the artists and the artist management. I mean, a record company sometimes can get involved in that, but and I'm owed a few more, which I'm getting ready to collect because I think about it, and you have to kind of remind people. But yes, you have to really, really be dedicated. And, my love of the music business was easy for me. Okay. I didn't mind.
Well, you were friends with the Allman Brothers growing up.
Yeah. And that's how I really got into show business. Okay. Dwayne Allman, kind of was an influence on me. And we had a couple of other associates, but he really was my major influence in getting involved in show business. Because I couldn't play anything. Okay. So the only opportunity I had was to be in business. Okay. Get in the business part of it. I mean, I wasn't like them. They were playing instruments and singing and writing songs and stuff like that. So I figured that's the way I would go. And that's really how I got into it.
So you somehow you made the decision to come up to Gainesville.
Well, no, I think that what these guys created here for the music scene in Gainesville and the arts, whatever, was really cool. And the timing for me that summer that they were getting it together, I was involved in a couple of big shows in the Orange Bowl. Because the city of Miami had reopened up their facilities because they'd had a 5-year moratorium because Jim Morrison had exposed himself. And the city of Miami said, everything's closed down. And they did it for 5 years.
And you know who represented Jim Morrison in that case? Ben Montench's father.
Oh, I never
Really?
did that.
Yeah.
I did not know that before he became a judge himself.
Before he became a judge
Wow.
himself.
No, Ben Montench from Tom Petty and
Right,
the
well,
Heartbreakers,
right,
his father.
right, became a circuit court judge.
Right,
Yeah.
he was partners with Sella Golden and Larry Turner.
So
That's a
by
great
the end
piece
of the
of trivia.
summer, I came to Gainesville. Plus, my mother was older and was ill and living in Daytona, so I needed to be closer to home. So it all worked out. It's timing. I mean, in anything. And here I was here for 10 years. We had a ball. And we worked hard and we did a lot. We created a lot of shows.
Timing was all about. This was all about just
It was
timing.
exactly.
It just all kind of
it really fell together. The stars lined up for it, and
the people lined up.
and the
for it.
people.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to read just a few of the list of shows. This is not the complete list, but Richie Havens, Eric Burden Band, Eric Burden and the
That was
Animals,
exciting for
okay?
me because he was a hero of mine
sure.
growing up.
That was huge.
I
What a
spent some
singer.
time with him. We laid out in the sun, and that was an honor to present him.
You laid out in the sun.
Well,
with
no,
Eric Burden?
because he was from a Brit, and that's what he wanted to do during the day. He had a sound check, and he was waiting to get a sound check, and I remember I went out and hung out with him and talked to
It
him.
was January 29th,
Yeah.
1975.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it was sunny and it was cold. No, he'd probably been in the cold. It was sunny that day, and it wasn't.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't like laying out by a pool. He just wanted to get some sunshine. He was British, okay, a cool guy though.
And then Weather Report.
Oh, wow.
I love them.
Jaco Pastorius.
Yeah, I love those guys. Wayne Shorter did a magnificent job with that act. And I not only did them in Gainesville, I did them in Atlanta and in Miami and in Orlando because nobody was really doing much with them. And the minute I'd put those shows on sale, they'd sell out. They were great. Okay, they were great.
And then Melissa Manchester.
Yeah,
She worked for Bette Midler first, right?
She did.
And
She
then
did.
she went out on her own. John Mayall.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He was. Well, those acts were all so great, and he's still performing some.
Yeah. And then
He's
Ike
actually-
and Tina Turner review came in June 27th, 1975. Anybody remember that show?
I remember it really well because they wouldn't approve the date. And I had to go to California and make sure they were going to come and play it because they had a big money offer in Miami, and I lowballed them. We got that show for $6,000.
Wow.
And it was the Ike and Tina Turner review.
And it was actually Ike and Tina.
It
Okay.
I mean, but the
Yeah.
whole review, there must have been
Yeah.
10, 12
Oh, no,
people
yeah.
on
Wow.
stage. But wasn't there a story about the relationship between Ike?
Well, that was when it was very tense with them, and he was really tough. Okay, and but Tina, it was abusive, and you could tell it was just pressure and being around them. You felt it.
Was there a
and-
story
and-
about one of them showing up separately in a taxi?
Well, no, she came in a cab. Okay, she didn't travel with, and I think she probably always did that. But I remember her getting out of the cab. She was just not happy. She was not a happy camper, but they performed well. They did a great job.
Guys, we got to cut to another break, and we are going to have tons more war stories from 3 legendary music industry icons from Gainesville, Florida. Tell you, you shaped my early years when I was in college here, probably led to me wanting to get into the business, the great stuff you guys were doing. Today is the 26th of March, Friday, and this is the 22nd episode of Meldon Law and Friends. We primarily do personal injury law. We represent victims of big truck crashes, motor vehicle cases, pedestrian. We even have represented people on electric scooters, you name it, bicycles, everything else. Statewide, we handle cases, whether it's South Florida, whether it's West Coast of Florida, all the way up through North Florida and Gainesville. Give us a call anytime, 1-800-373-8000. We are the only official law firm partner of the Florida Gators. Did I get that right? Close?
You stepped on it a little bit.
I stepped on it a little bit.
But that's the only official law firm partner of the Florida Gators.
That we are, and we will be right back.
When you're a member of the Gator Nation, you know what it means to never back down. Meldon Law has been a proud supporter of the Gator Nation since 1971. Two forces that won't back down. As the old saying goes, if you can't beat 'em, join 'em.
Welcome back to today's edition of Meldon Law and Friends, a weekly podcast brought to you by Meldon Law, a statewide law firm with its primary office in Gainesville and also in South Florida, covering the entire Tri-County area, Miami-Dade through Broward through Palm Beach County, and also in Marion County, where this man, Jeffrey Meldon, has been practicing for 43 years. Jeffrey, we've been talking about the new Ocala office. Any update on what's going on with that?
Yeah, we got our certificate of occupancy. We're the office is open. We're finishing up the beautiful landscaping. That office is going to be spectacular. It was built in 1959. It looks like it came out of Happy Days. It has that
It really does.
1950s architecture to it, and we renovated it to its original grandeur. We didn't change any of the architecture. And when folks from Marion County come and visit us there, we're going to give them a free cup, a Meldon Law Gator Cup, and we're going to have lots of other surprises for Marion County. And if you're listening to us and you're in Marion County, it's right across from the Advent Hospital. And look at the sign. We have this incredible billboard, electronic billboard, and we're going to utilize it to help the charitable organizations in Marion County make people aware of what's going on. And we're really looking forward to helping be a great member of the Marion County community.
Well, I know we've got full-time staff there. It's a fully staffed office, just like we have in South Florida. So we've been representing clients, really, like you said, for over 40 years in the Marion County area, and got quite a few cases going now. And I'm just thrilled. I think we're just going to have such a presence. The sign itself is just incredible. You can't miss it if you're going up and down Pine.
Well, we had to hire somebody who has 9 years of experience with the sign makers company, right, to figure out how to program the thing, okay?
Yeah.
Because it is it's capable of doing anything you want. So anyhow, it's going to be fun. But I want to get back to our special guests today, Albert Teebagy and Jim Forsman. Albert, can you tell us a little bit about how you were able to get in all these incredible acts? I didn't even finish the list, but I mean, Taj Mahal, Weather Report, Count Basie, B.B. King, Jose Feliciano, LaBelle with Patti LaBelle, Return of Forever with Chick Corea. How are you getting all these incredible acts in?
Well, we did Jose on a homecoming week one time, and I have to say this about Jose Feliciano. He was the only entertainer that always thanked me. And he thanked everybody, but he'd always mention me by name. And I always loved that about him. And when I see him now, I think about it, how he was always say, I want to thank Albert Teebagy. And he'd be up there. Nobody
who else?
Nobody ever did that, okay?
Well, I want you to tell everybody the Steve Martin story when he was performing at the Beef and Bottle and what happened.
So the way we get acts into Gainesville hadn't had a regular guy that was based in Gainesville with a venue that could offer a play date specifically for artists that were coming in and out of Florida. So when they created the Great Southern, it was our sandbox. And, I was the guy, I was the conduit, and I knew all the agencies and made myself known to them. So they'd call me and say, hey, we're routing through Chuck Mangione, we're routing through whoever. I mean, sometimes we do isolated dates. In Steve Martin's case, we'd fly him in from L.A.
You can do that with a comic, yeah.
With a comic, you can do that because it's not a crew in a band.
Yeah,
Anyways.
but isn't it true that you first saw him over at the Beef and Bottle?
Yeah, Steve used to play. They worked him to death over at the Beef and Bottle. He'd have to do 3 nights and like 2 shows. And by the time the end of the evening was, he'd had too many drinks, and God bless him. I knew he had the ability to draw more people than and not have it spread out like that. They made a lot of money off of him. And so I went over there and I said, it's time for you to think about going and featuring and drawing 800 people on one big show. And we did them at midnight because we had the movies.
But what did he say to you when
Well, no, and I'll never forget it because we sat up at the bar and he looked at me and it was almost like a scene out of The Jerk. He said, do you really think I can sell it out? He wasn't confident in his own ability to do it. Of course, our role was to judge what talent came into the market and could we sell it and could we make it support itself. And I called his agent and he said, well, he knew that I had a relationship with his agent because actually they did the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band too. But anyways, when we got him to do a 12 o'clock midnight show on a Friday night
Albert,
at the Music Hall.
Do you recall
Okay.
telling me to go pick him up at the airport?
I used to tell him he would because he'd come by himself.
I know.
And
So,
he'd call me
wait a minute.
and
I don't know, what what he's going to look like or anything. I go out in the airport and he's wearing a trench coat and a hat, and I looked around and kind of figured, well, that must be him. So I walked over. You Steve Martin? Yeah. Here we go. He's real quiet.
Yeah. He was very quiet.
It's really quiet.
Yeah.
Now, wasn't that the show when Joan Baez showed up?
Well, that night.
Tell us what
yes,
happened.
that might have been the second show.
Yeah.
That wasn't the night when he took everybody out after the show out into the street.
Oh, tell that story. That's
and then
a
he got
great
up
story.
on the
fire
light
hydrant.
on the light pole.
No, on the fire hydrant. He was
Well,
there.
then when he stood up and he was continuing to talk to people, and people were
With his arrow through his
they
head.
were mesmerized by him.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
here's the
he had
story.
that kind of control.
We do a
just
12
sitting back.
o'clock show. We do a 12 o'clock show, and we have to close down the Great Southern Music Hall by 2 and have everybody out of there by 2, which meant we had to tell people to start leaving about 1:45.
Right, correct.
And Steve Martin was just getting into his
He was
prime.
revved up. He was
He
doing
was
a great
revved up,
show.
and he was going, and we're telling him we got to close it down. We got to close it down. Because it was we had liquor sold there,
Correct.
right? That was why we had to close it. So,
Mm-hmm.
so he says, are you guys ready for more? And the audience goes, yeah, we want more. So he says, well, let's follow me out on the University
They
Avenue.
were leaving. They
800
wanted more.
people went out onto University Avenue, closed down the street. The police blocked it off. Steve Martin gets up on a fire hydrant and finishes his routine with the stupid arrow
Yeah, with
in
that
his
arrow.
head.
He had some props he always had. And he always had a stool that you sat there so he could set the stuff on of it. Balloons, he was really big with balloons and stuff
But-
like
but
that.
it
But
was-
he came by himself because he was only making $1,500 a night.
The night that
Okay.
Joan Baez showed up, she drove up in an Excalibur, those big fancy looking things, and I'm standing there at the front door, and we were sold out. So I had no idea who she was. And she came up and said something about getting in. I said, no, we're sold out. And all
They
the
came and
employees,
got me.
yeah, all the employees, everybody, they would say, that's Joan Baez.
Are you kidding?
Oh, God, excuse me.
Well, that was when the Rolling Thunder Review was in town, right?
Correct.
They were playing at the university at the stadium.
They were. We had Steve. I knew that the Rolling Thunder Review with Dylan and Joan and Bob Newirth and Roger McGuinn and all them was going to be at Florida Field. It was in April. Okay, and I booked Steve Martin that night before because I knew everybody was going to be revved up for that. So Joan shows up on a motorcycle. She's with Bob Newirth, and they pull up out front. And I remember our manager came and got me and said, "There's a woman out here." And I went out and I knew it was her right away, obviously. And I introduced myself. A longtime associate of mine and dear friend, Jeffrey Bloom, was working for them. And, he was in town and I knew what was going on with them. So we took her in and Steve was he needed a diaper. He was so excited that she came out to see him, and it was so funny. He was gushing. He was like so excited, and we took her backstage, and then we went to a party afterwards.
Wasn't that the Hilton? At the
Yeah,
presidential?
yeah. No, we went to a party
was Bob
afterwards.
Dylan here at that show?
Right.
Yeah, Bob Dylan was in the Rolling Thunder Review.
Yeah, he was out there
And
too.
Bill
we were
Graham
all out there.
Bill Graham managed that tour, and his partner was on the road.
So didn't Steve Martin then go work the show the next day? Didn't
They
he?
invited him out to MC the show the next day, and he was honored, and he did a really nice job, and it was good for him in the town because it exposed him once again, in front of quite a lot of people. I mean, well, they did it in one side of the stadium then, but there was probably 25,000 people there.
Anyhow,
Do you remember the story on Richie Havens? Somebody brought him here, and he was out there in the field at the city football field.
Citizens
out there along
Field,
the road.
yeah, I think.
And that everybody said, well, let's do a show at the Great Southern. And that was a Sunday or something. And you guys, everybody just brought him in. All of a sudden, everybody's there, and it's a big Sunday show. We'd not even planned.
Right.
well, I remember winding up at the Holiday Inn on Southwest 13th Street after the show with Richie Havens and all the girls he could scarf up at the time.
Yeah, a character.
I really liked
But
it.
anyhow, Albert, one of the memorable things that you accomplished was the Rumble from the Jungle. Can you tell us a little bit
Oh,
about
my
that
goodness.
story?
Oh, well, when we had the music hall, of course we had a venue, and we were consistent. We were available. When anybody was coming through and they needed a night of employment, and they were an artist and wanted a guarantee, maybe in a percentage or a bonus, we were available to do it. But Angelo Dundee's son, Jim Dundee, Big Jim Dundee, was going to college here at the University of Florida, and he was I don't know if he was in optometry school here. Is there a school? Is there an optometry college?
I don't know.
Anyways, he
I
ended
don't
up
think
being
so.
an eye doctor. But he comes to see me, and he comes into town, and he comes up, and I guess you guys gave him an introduction. And he said, "Look," he says, you guys can start getting the closed circuit fights of the Muhammad Ali fights." And we had a venue, and I ended up doing them in Tallahassee, and I ended up doing like 3 markets with him after that.
But what was the big fight? The first one, wasn't that the Rumble in the Jungle?
Well, the first fight was Ken Norton, but we didn't do the early. We got in later in the 70s. Okay,
Right.
Yeah. Well, the Rumble in the
But it
Jungle
was
was Zaire.
Frazier
Was that
and-
Zaire? That was
Yeah, in Zaire. But anyhow, so the Southern Bell was the big, for your telephone. It was about 300 feet from where the Great Southern
Yeah, it was next door.
And in order to get the closed circuit for the fight,
The
we had to
equipment
run
was
a cord
archaic.
300
I
feet.
never knew that. That is
Okay,
crazy.
is that
It was
the
black
truth,
and
Jimmy?
white.
Is that it?
The guy took forever, and then in comes this little camera that, really just a black and white stupid camera
It
to show
was.
this picture up there that you get some binoculars. So
Oh, it
the
was
second
really
row-
primitive
It was
back then.
It was very
primitive,
primitive.
Very
archaic
primitive, yeah.
equipment.
But
That's-
wait a minute.
They did
We
it.
had to sell tickets for $25 a piece, and
Yeah,
that was we'd laid out all the money, and I'm sitting there. I didn't think we'd sell the tickets.
So
all of a
let-
sudden, it's all sold out, and there are people offering $100 to get in. We couldn't let any more people in.
And I remember Clark Butler was there, Norwood Hope was there, all
The
the
coaches were
judges,
there.
the coaches were there, all the
Steinbrenner
lawyers.
bought all the
And-
tickets.
Right, I got a call from Mr. Steinbrenner's
Yeah.
office, and
George
they said
Steinbrenner.
it was his assistant called me and said, he was in Ocala, okay,
Right.
and they wanted to bring a bunch of people to see the fight, and I remember we made some tickets available to them. They bought a bunch
I
of
don't
them.
know.
They bought a whole bunch of
What a
tickets.
story.
Do you remember we had the girls who were working
Right.
at the theater? We dressed them up like the classic cigar girls with the
Yeah.
trays, and we were
They were selling cigars and
They were
cigarettes.
selling cigars.
It
So
was
in the
awesome.
Great Southern Music Hall back then, you could smoke while you watched the show,
Right.
and people didn't care whether it was cigar
And you
or
could have
pot.
a drink, a cocktail.
Right?
They'd
I
bring you
mean,
down.
About halfway through
Free-form
the
television
show,
here.
all of a sudden, the smoke would start coming up, and everybody would be having a good time. And we had a lot of the Gainesville Police Department on our security force,
you did.
right?
Yeah.
and we kind of had. We were kind of like we felt like we were protected because we.
Well, it was a jovial and period of time where everybody was having fun.
We had a good run with the series of fights Muhammad Ali did. We did do Hagler and Hearns and Leonard Durand. We got some other ones besides that.
You did Muhammad Ali versus the wrestler. I remember that.
Right, but
Antonio Inoki. Yeah.
But the reason we got it was I give credit to Jim Dundee and Angelo Dundee. They were in Miami, and Jimmy was going to school here. And he's the one that connected that all up.
You remember we had lunch with them at the Primrose?
I didn't get to go to that, and it was my fault. It was my fault.
I thought you were there. We had lunch with Angelo Dundee at the Primrose.
Why did I never hear about this stuff? You should have looked me up. I wanted to hang out with Angelo Dundee.
No, I remember.
They came up for Parents Weekend, Angie and his wife.
That was one of the neat things about the Great Southern Music Hall.
We got celebrities in town.
We had these celebrities, and we got to take them out for dinner, and there was this wonderful place called the Primrose Inn right across the street, and we'd walk across before the show if they wanted to have some dinner. I remember I had dinner with Count Basie there, with Dave Brubeck and his sons, and
they knew you.
Yeah.
And well, Dave Brubeck knew me because my father had booked Dave Brubeck in his jazz club during the 1950s, and Brubeck had brought his sons in, Darius and another D, Chris, to play two generations of Brubeck. So it was two generations of Meldons booking two generations of Brubeck.
On that thought, we've got to cut to a break, our third and final break. What an episode. I have to tell you, Jeffrey, you said this would be epic. It has exceeded anything I would have imagined. Today is Friday, March 26th. This is episode 22 of Meldon Law and Friends. We will be right back with our very good friends, Jim Forsman, Albert Teebagy, talking about music history in Gainesville.
Gainesville music.
And the Great Southern Music Hall, the glory days. And maybe we'll have those days again. Who knows?
You know what it was called? The Showplace of the South.
Of the South.
That it was. We'll be right back.
The Gator Nation will be the first to tell you that in all kinds of weather, we all stick together, which is why Meldon Law is honored to be the only official law firm partner of the Florida Gators. We hope you never find yourself the victim of a serious accident, but if you do, our team is here for you. Gators won't back down from a fight, and neither do we.
Hello and welcome back to today's episode of Meldon Law and Friends. Today is Friday, the 26th of March, and you know what? This is a very special episode. Jeffrey, this is the first time we've had the same guests on the entire hour, and we could probably go several more hours, so that's how good of a show this is, I have to say. A couple of things I want to touch on before we get back to our guests. We, of course, have tickets again this weekend for the softball games. The Lady Gators softball team is playing LSU this weekend. There's a game tonight. We've already given away the tickets to tonight's game, but there is a game tomorrow at 5 p.m., a game Sunday at 11 a.m., 6 tickets for each game. We have a group of 4 and a group of 2 that we're giving away, so you have 2 opportunities to win for each of the upcoming 2 games, and there's a gift certificate for dinner, right?
That's correct. $100 to Miapa Cafe for the 4-ticket winner and $50 for the 2-ticket winner. So go to meldonlaw.com, our homepage. At the top, there's a red bar that says enter the contest. Enter it. We are having great response from everybody who's been a winner, and we're supporting Gator sports because they are great.
They are great. You know what's also great? The fact that in Gainesville, Florida, correct me if I'm wrong, 9 members of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame are from Gainesville, Florida. And that ties in, you know, you guys had a lot to do with that, the 3 of you, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah,
the 70s. We were 70s guys to start.
Well, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers.
You had a lot to do with that.
And then, and then 2 of the Eagle members, Bernie Len and Don Felder,
Right.
Stephen Stills, and last but not least, Bo Diddley.
Right.
So for a small town. But what's amazing is if you go through the list of people that we brought into the Great Southern, many of them are in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I mean, Bo Diddley, Jerry Lee Lewis, Jimmy Buffett, if he isn't in already, he should be. Eric Burden and the Animals.
Right.
One after another. John Mayall, Ike Tina Turner, B.B. King, Count Basie, Taj Mahal. All these were, great performers. But I want Jim to tell the story because in addition to live theater, we also had movies that we were bringing in because it was a movie theater originally. And we brought in, which was a controversial X-rated film. Jim, you want to tell the story? You remember the film we were trying to bring in?
Well, there was a movie called The Devil and Miss Jones that had some questionable.
It was X-rated.
X-rated, I guess. And we were concerned about showing it and getting ourselves in trouble. So the state attorney's office would eat lunch at the Primrose Inn, and we invited them over for a special showing.
That was Gene Whitworth.
Gene
God bless
Whitworth
him.
Right.
and several others.
Yeah.
And we asked them to review it to tell us if this movie was going to get us into trouble. And they came over and watched the movie and said, no, it looks fine with us.
Well, they said, we think you can slide by.
Yeah, it'd be okay. So we figured then the local law enforcement or whoever said it's okay. So we went from there to selling tickets. And that night, the entire theater was packed. It was full of people. We sold out.
Sure.
And we got some information. I got a phone call that they weren't interested, but somebody else might be. And I looked out across the street, and there must have been 35 agents lined up across
Federal agents.
Federal agents.
Federal,
across
okay.
the street.
Forget state. This is federal now.
So Bobby Lieberman,
Right.
Went
Went on to become Jimmy Buffett's
Road manager.
Bobby Lieberman went up on stage and said, there's some people across the street that are telling us that you can't see this show. And so we're going to refund all the tickets. So 800 people, they were coming across the street about the same time 800 people were herding out of the front of the theater. And it was a mess. And so one of the agents came up to Albert and said, "Who's in charge?" And Albert said, "Nobody."
I did.
I don't know.
Because I had booked the movie and I was getting nervous about what was going to happen. Okay. Because it got kind of crazy.
Trust me, I used that strategy later. Another story for another day.
Everybody was kind of a little concerned about the movie. So there was a plan in the employees. And this thing just disappeared. We don't know where it went.
Oh, the film itself.
Yeah, everything gone.
Oh, the whole film. You had the bag man to run off with the film.
No, we didn't know we didn't know. I didn't know that. We didn't really think in our minds, but the employees were thinking we need to get rid of it. So one of the employees or several. But that night I went over and had dinner at the Primrose Inn. And when I came out, I was going into the office to unlock it, and the FBI agent came up and said, "I need to talk to you." And so I said, okay. And we went upstairs in the office, and Claude Meadows was his name.
I remember Claude very
Meadows.
well.
Right.
And he sat across from me and said, "Do you know where the movie is?" I said, "I have no idea. I didn't buy the movie. I don't know anything about the movie. I know we were going to show it." And he said, I said, "Why? What are you concerned about? Did you not like the movie?" And he said, "Well, we're not sure." And I said, "What do you mean you're not sure?" He said, "Well, until we see it, we couldn't tell whether or not." I said, "So you're telling me that we could go in there and show the movie, and then you're going to sit there and decide that there's something wrong and go arrest somebody?" I said, "Why don't you just tell them that up front?" I mean, I was so angry with him.
And I don't blame you.
I was so angry
The
that
feds
this guy
wanted their
was
own
sitting
private
there,
showing of it.
trying to set somebody up if they don't want something. If they knew we had it, they knew it is advertised, and there was no excuse for them not coming and saying, "We need to get it," or "You can't show it," or something.
It caused a lot of stress and
It did.
unnecessary.
So I was yelling at him just like I'm yelling now. 'Cause I got upset with it. That was ridiculous.
Well, this is Meldon Law and Friends, and these are the kind of crazy friends I used to hang out with.
What do you mean used to?
Years.
What do you mean used to?
And they're still great friends of mine. We still stay in touch all the time. But what's pretty amazing is the Great Southern Music Hall was created in 1974 by a bunch of 20-year-olds who didn't really know what we're doing. Albert was the only one that had any real prior experience. And somehow it became the most significant music forum that ever existed in the city of Gainesville. The University of Florida certainly has brought in great shows, but Albert, how did the Great Southern differ from what the university did?
Well, when I first came here, there was Miles Wilkin was here, and I was worried about being competitive with the free shows that the university liked to book because I wanted everything. All that stuff that they wanted for free shows, we needed it to sell tickets to try to, make ends meet and, pay our expenses. So I was a much more active buyer and had more availability of my venue than the college did at that time.
And where were they doing shows at?
Well, they were doing stuff.
Well, back then they were doing it
Before
the
Lake
Union
Alice.
Lawn. They were doing Union Lawn, Beta Field,
and then
Lake
they eventually
Alice.
did Lake Alice,
And then we built the band shell.
And they built the band shell,
Yeah.
but they just couldn't do what we did
Sure.
on a regular, consistent basis and provide the name entertainment that we could provide. I mean, when we were in our earlier years, we were cranking 50 shows a year through that little theater.
And the university
okay?
was lucky.
And we were making those bands do 2 shows, which was always challenging because we needed 1,600 seats. Okay, I mean we could only charge $5 to $10 a ticket. I mean we couldn't gross.
I remember the very first time you played.
Albert didn't charge enough for shows. I think that was a problem.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Well,
if I thought I could have charged more.
Yeah, well, I remember Ray Charles coming in for a whole week. We had we actually got a call from them, and they wanted to use our show for a rehearsal,
Right.
For them for a whole week, and they agreed to play 2 shows on Friday and 2 shows on Saturday.
Yeah, he had a big
And
band.
you did that
Yeah.
before. That was before me. That was just
But,
before me.
but when Ray Charles asked you to hang out at your place for a week and play that incredible music and then perform at the end of the week,
Well, he was
that was a big
he was
deal.
staying out there at the Hilton, at the presidential suite, and he asked me to drive him around. He wanted to see Gainesville, and he would get in the back. I had a Lincoln Continental. He got in the back seat,
I remember
and
that.
I drove him around.
Yeah.
And then he said, "I want a carrot cake and some watermelon."
Yeah.
So we got him carrot cake and watermelon, and I was driving him around one day, and he said, "Jim, you got to turn down the air conditioning and salt the popcorn if you want to sell more beer." Well, that's pretty good. But he was very.
That's
Now-
well, he's
now when you
experienced. There's somebody that was really new. Okay.
Now,
Yeah,
now,
nice, just a superhuman
now,
being. Nice
now
person.
Ray Charles was great. Now, he was blind, and you were riding him around to see
Right.
Gainesville. Explain how that happened.
I really didn't question it. I just drove around. I'd say, "Well, here's the university, and here's this," and
Okay.
he said, "That's great," and that was it.
Wow, I know, Albert. You had some stories about BB King and our favorite barbecue maestro.
Yeah. Well, I did BB very regularly and maybe twice a year because they called me because they needed the date to get him to South Florida, and he had a regular play down there, and his agent was a great guy, and I love him to death, and he'd call up and we'd always accommodate BB King because he's the legendary guy,
The king of the blues.
But
Lucille,
it
the
was
guitar.
always fun because he'd go up in that little dressing room that we had. He didn't have a camper, and all these women would want to come and say hi to him. BB was he was a ladies' man. Okay. And that's why he has 11 children. So, and one of his daughters lived
Patty.
here. But anyways, to make a long story short, he was always loved coming to Gainesville. And Prez Myers, that owned President's Ribs at the time, would always
President's.
take him out after the show. And they'd go to clubs and go whatever they do. And they were really fun together, those guys. Just to see those 2 guys together, in Gainesville, and it was always a lot of fun. And BB was great. He was always really a great guy. Always treated me really good, and it was always an honor to have him come into Gainesville and play at the Great Southern.
Guys, we only have about a minute and a half left. So, any quick final, worst story you want to just get off your chest?
We covered a lot.
We did.
Patty King showed up at the back door of the Great Southern and said, "I'm BB King's daughter." And his manager was there, and manager said he doesn't have any kids. That's what he said.
Bebop.
So-
Bebop.
Yeah.
That was his manager.
So I went over and talked to BB. I said, Patty King's at the back door. She said, "She's your daughter." And he said, She is. Would you please bring her in? Yeah. And that was it.
There you go. The boss said it. That was the word.
So anyhow, this is, I'm Jeffrey Meldon, and we've had our great guests today, Jim Forsman and Albert Teebagy, who were my partners in the Great Southern Music Hall from 1974 through 1978. And we are going to be doing a special museum exhibit for the Great Southern that we're going to talk about later on, but it's coming within the next couple months, and we're very excited about that. So the Great Southern Music Hall lives on.
It does.
Awesome.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of Meldon Law and Friends. It's been a fantastic one. Hey, if you watched it all the way through, spread the word. This is a great show. We'll be seeing you next week. Remember, we're going to be going live on Facebook Live starting Tuesday, April 6th, to take your questions. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you soon.